Good morning, Paul. How's it going?
Oh, life is good. There's a lot of pollen in the air in Washington, and I'm just realizing that breathing is optional.
Optional.
Yeah, you can blow it out your ear.
Oh, of course. That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
As long as you're into your routines, breathing becomes
Yeah. All right, Paul. I would say maybe it's important, but I'm not going to fight you on it. You got
No, I'm
pollen.
older.
You're older, wiser. You know breathing is
Wiser,
optional. All right, I will dive into our headlines from last week. Our cover story highlighted another episode of The Directors, which is a special segment of the Cancer Letter podcast. This time, Tom Lynch of Fred Hutch and Skip Burris of Sarah Cannon talked about how to navigate the uncertainty facing the field of oncology and biomedical science right now. We had a huge story. It was over 6,000 words that me and Claire did, where we basically covered the back-to-back congressional hearings at which HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. Defended the NIH and NCI budget cuts, funding freezes, and riffs. Basically, it was funny. Claire took one and I took the other, and we melded them together. So it was definitely a labor of love on our end. And there's a lot to check out in that story. So definitely peruse at your leisure, I would say, because there's a lot of content in there. And then there was so much content, in fact, that we pulled a specific thing out where I wrote a story about a patient named Natalie Phelps, who has become a very central figure in the controversy over the dysfunction the Trump administration's rifts and budget cuts have brought to NIH and NCI. And at the HELP committee hearing on May 14th, Kennedy said that Phelps was medically ineligible for the trial, that she had been purported to have treatment delays. It was an NIH trial, clinical trial. And the Washington Post and other media outlets covered the fact that she had basically faced delays in her care. And basically Senator Patty Murray and Kennedy went back and forth a little bit. And I was able to talk to the principal investigator of the trial, Stephen A. Rosenberg, about Natalie. And he told me that while she is technically medically ineligible right now, it's her lesions are too small. She's basically still being evaluated for inclusion in the trial in the future. And regardless, almost all of his patients, including Natalie, if she becomes eligible, face at least a month-long delay in treatment because of the rifts. So that was a really good story to have. Really nice to provide extra context to sort of the back and forth between Kennedy and Senator Murray. And finally, we had a guest editorial by Mace Rothenberg about the first exhibit at his Museum of Medicine and Biomedical Discovery, and a guest editorial by Wafik El-Deiry about how President Trump has an opportunity to position the U.S. cancer field to lead the world. And that's the story we're going to dive into today.
Well, rather than having us summarize what Dr. El-Deiry wrote, why don't we just ask him to tell us about it? So he happens to be right here, so let's ask him. Dr. El-Deiry?
Hey, how are you?
Doing great. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So your story that we just got into the history of cancer, of funding for cancer, of NIH and NCI. What do you see as the trends? And also, what do you see, more importantly, what do you see today? What can be done? What is to be done?
Yeah, so having a chance to review the history was really eye-opening for me. You know, I have been in the field for coming up on 30 years, and most people in my generation, contemporaries who've been doing research for many years are certainly aware of the NIH doubling, 98 to 2003. And we, generally have little knowledge of what happened before as far as government investments. Post that doubling, most people have thought that, wow, this is great. They doubled the budget. And then we sort of accepted the idea that, well, they just didn't plan ahead in terms of what would happen with the larger workforce, and that there wouldn't necessarily be more doubling after that. And, we generally accepted that, not too many questions asked. We've suffered for years with the flat budgets and the competitiveness and so on. So going back essentially to the 1930s and seeing what happened for 65 years before the last doubling revealed that there had been many, many doublings all along, every 7 years. In some periods, the budget would increase tenfold in a 10-year period, or early on, the NIH budget increased 1,000-fold at some point.
Well, that was the Shannon years, and that was kind of one of those great moments that people still long for. But more importantly, right now, I guess the first question that's really kind of an elephant in the room is, are you a candidate for the NCI job? Is your candidacy active?
I have been a candidate since December. I was vetted early on in December and January. And then there was a silent period. We didn't have an NIH director. And then Jay Bhattacharya was confirmed in early April. And I recently heard from the administration and had a conversation last week with them about the possibility. So as far as I know, I am a candidate, and I think a serious one at that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. From what I understand, there are 3, and you're one of them. So...
I'll say that my thinking at the moment is, what does a new director face? And what makes it exciting? And why would anybody want to do this? And, from my point of view, it's worth it if one can impact on the future in a meaningful way. And for me, that's about the national investment in cancer research and science. And, in that regard, looking at the history of investment going back into the last century, I really couldn't tell you what happened over the last 20 years. Why was it flat and not keeping up with inflation even, and now facing major reductions? It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I think there's an opportunity. I think there's a good opportunity, big opportunity for the Trump administration to seize the moment. Look at what's been happening. If you are serious about America first and leading the world in science and technology and medicine, and that includes cancer, then you have a chance to do something truly transformational. And I think it's a good idea to bring this out before a director is appointed, because I think that is going to be the challenge. I think being in such a position without having these issues out in the open sort of ties your hands. What can you do at that point? There's clearly work to be done and issues to be addressed before the government will invest in more in the NIH and in the NCI. But I think there really needs to be a path towards that.
So far, we've seen cuts and morale that has been plummeting throughout the federal government. Can you reverse that? Would you try to? Money certainly would help, but that's not what's in the budget. It's not what's in the budget proposal for the administration. So how do you go from this to this, from the low to the high?
So, I think it's going to have to be a gradual process with a path towards what we would all like to see. I think we all would like to see the NIH and the NCI shine and grow and have impact, ultimately to help patients. Everybody's affected by cancer. Doesn't matter what your political persuasion is. So, there's clearly some waste and inefficiency and things that have to be dealt with to start to move in the right direction. But there's also a need for subject matter expertise, and there's a need for strong leadership and strong advocacy for cancer and in the field of oncology at the NCI. I think it's urgent. I think many months have gone by, and part of the urgency is what we deal with in the field of cancer, with over 2 million diagnoses this year, more than 600,000 deaths, and with a number approaching 20 million survivors and their families. That's a lot of people in the country who vote, who are touched by cancer. And, again, it affects everybody. We heard over the weekend about former President Biden. We need more research. We need more prevention cures. And we really have a lot of work to do, and we need to get going.
Mm-hmm. Well, it needs somebody in charge who has a scientific vision right now and who understands the whole field.
Well, the NCI is a complicated place, with an intramural program, program at Frederick, the extramural program, the Cancer Centers program, various programs of research excellence like the SPORE program and the program project grants and the investigator grants and new grants. And it's evolved nicely for years. I mean, it's been developing for decades, and it's quite well developed. It's really a model for many things in translational science and in clinical trials and in collaboration among institutions, and I would say in impact.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's actually one of those places where you can actually see it on the population level. There is impact from the National Cancer Program. It's silly to say otherwise.
Well, there are still a lot of people diagnosed and dying of cancer every year, of common cancers. And so, yes, many exciting things have happened, but we do need to be purposeful and to address the burden of cancer moving into the future. I personally think precision oncology is a great opportunity to do that. I think more studies of the causes of cancer and ways of detecting cancer early when it's curable And of course, there are many things that are easy to impact on the burden of cancer. As the American Cancer Society has pointed out, things we eat and our habits and our there are ways we can improve the incidence of cancer that represent low-hanging fruit. And it's in part about execution to achieve those things. But I also think the NCI is a place where truly innovative, unique science and translation can and need to take place. And I learned that from site visits at the NCI, where people have in the past reflected upon that. What should we be doing here? What's the opportunity of having an NCI? And it's really about doing things that nobody else can do.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful to hear your views on this, and we hope something comes of it soon. Because we are both seeing from our coverage right now, it's NCI may not be in a free fall, but it is sort of a gradual fall in terms of morale, direction, loss of vision, and all it needs is the vision and the direction, and that's that.
I think it needs to be stabilized, and it needs advocacy, and it needs pushback where things that are happening don't make sense. And I don't think that anybody intentionally is trying to do harm. I just think that it takes more closer oversight of what's happening and working with the administration to make sure that things aren't done that then have to be reversed. That what happens is more precise.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It is an exciting time, what's happening in the field. And I think so many things are possible with AI and with insights into the biology of cancer. And we have such amazing people who work at the NCI and at our cancer centers all around the country. It's really a very special community. As a cancer center director, whenever I'm at meetings with my colleagues, it's a very special group of individuals who are always looking for ways to collaborate and rather than compete. And you don't see that very much in the world of science or in other professions. But that's what we have here.
So, yes, it is definitely what I've been seeing for the past 30 years or so. So, yeah, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
So, Jacquelyn, what have we just heard? I think it's kind of what I've heard is a confirmation that that Dr. El-Deiry is indeed a candidate. I think there are three altogether that I know of. But my White House sources are not that good. And we heard him say something very interesting, which is, okay, let's just accept all of the Maha language and let's just do what we do well, which is cancer research, and make the world understand that we are the best and we can continue to be the best, and let's just keep the faith. And he certainly has the faith. Yeah. So it was wonderful to hear that. What did you think?
I thought it was great. I thought it was really nice how he sort of, like you said, he's accepting what's happening right now. He's accepting the potential insight that the administration is suggesting, like the focus on prevention and things like that. But I definitely appreciated that he basically called for increased stability or restored stability to NIH and NCI. And also, of course, love that he is a proponent of increased funding. Obviously, I think we're a little biased, but increased funding will definitely help the situation right now.
A little biased. I think we have always believed as a publication that funding for good peer-reviewed research is better than not funding good peer-reviewed research. So that's, in that sense, it's not really, you can call it bias, you can call it editorial direction, but it does come with peer review. So, and it should be as rigorous as possible. But it is interesting to hear him say all of this. He was also really acknowledging that there is, if there is a need to stabilize the airplane and land it. Certainly it needs a pilot.
Absolutely.
And actually, the third thing that was not really said, well, no, he does say it. We haven't heard from patients yet. And that's why your story about Phelps, the patient, is so important.
Yeah, I would have loved to do more. We covered the hearing was on Tuesday? Was it Wednesday? Something like that. And it was just, we didn't have enough time to, make it a bigger story. But we've said this every podcast, I think, but we are definitely prioritizing patients and reaching out to them and stuff like that. So 100%.
Yeah, maybe we should actually have a patient on this podcast every now and then, as often as we can arrange it. Parents of a patient, since we're getting more into pediatric stuff now, and I think pediatric patients, that's a horrendous tragedy if they're indeed getting harmed by this lack of a pilot.
Yeah, that's definitely coming. A story on that's definitely coming. We just want to make sure we do a good, proper job. So,
and we don't know whether this is actually a lack of a pilot on this plane or whether this is bombing of an airfield. I actually, I'm not certain about what's actually going on. I'm just seeing things go badly right now.
Yeah, for sure. But like you said, like the directors talked about this week, there's really just so much uncertainty right now. We really don't know how it's all going to play out. And that's obviously causing its own chaos, but there's definitely a lot to cover in the future as well about how things actually land, like you're saying, like how things actually play out.
All right. Well, thank you. Another week.
Thank you,
Great
Paul.
time to be a journalist.
Another week.